Mara Calloway had learned, very early in life, that some people are born to be seen, and some are born to be useful. She had always been the second kind. She woke up every morning before the sun did. She tied her hair back with a rubber band that had seen better days, pulled on her gray linen uniform, and walked down 4 flights of stairs to the kitchen of Ashvale Estate, the grandest building in the entire territory. She had done this for 3 years. She knew every step of those stairs by heart. She knew which ones creaked and which ones were safe, and which one, on the second floor, had a loose nail that caught the hem of her apron if she moved too fast. The kitchen was her world. She knew it better than she knew anything else. She knew where the salt was kept, and how long the soup bones needed to simmer, and which pots had hot spots on the bottom. The head cook, a large and serious woman named Mrs. Fenn, had told her on her very first day, "You stay in this kitchen, you do your work, and you do not wander." Mara had followed that rule without question for 3 years. She was not unhappy. That is important to say. She was not miserable or bitter. She was simply quiet. She had learned to find small joys, the smell of fresh bread at 6 in the morning, the way the kitchen windows fogged up in winter, the occasional kind word from Petra, the young girl who peeled vegetables beside her. These things were enough. She had decided they were enough. The night of the centennial gathering changed everything, though not in any way she could have predicted or prepared for. The gathering happened once every 100 years. All 12 packs of the territory came together at Ashvale Estate for one grand night of ceremony, politics, and tradition. Alpha King Caden Varick, the most powerful man in the entire shifter world, was the host. The estate had been preparing for weeks. Extra staff had been hired. New tablecloths had been ordered. Mrs. Fenn had been working 18-hour days and walking around with a permanent line between her brows. Mara's job that night was simple. She was to stay in the kitchen, plate the desserts when the signal came, and not get in anyone's way. That was all. She was very good at that kind of job. But just before midnight, one of the senior servers came rushing into the kitchen and announced that someone had forgotten to bring the wine tray to the east corridor. His face was red, his voice was strained. He looked at Mara, because she was the closest person to the door. "You, take it. Third door on the left after the main staircase. Leave it on the side table. Come straight back." She took the tray and went. The east corridor was quieter than she expected. The music from the great hall floated through the walls, something slow and graceful, played by a string quartet. The lights in the corridor were dimmer than in the kitchen, warmer, and the floor was polished stone that reflected her own tired face back at her as she walked. She was 3 steps from the side table when the door at the far end of the corridor opened. She did not know who he was at first. She only saw a tall man in a dark formal jacket, walking with the kind of ease that belongs to people who have never once questioned whether they belong somewhere. He had dark hair, slightly loose at the ends, as if he had run his hand through it, and his eyes, when they landed on her, were the color of deep water just before a storm. She realized who he was half a second later. Alpha King Caden Varick. In person, in front of her, in an empty corridor, 3 steps away. Her body remembered the curtsy before her mind caught up. She dropped low, felt the tray tip dangerously, and grabbed it with both hands just in time. The wine glasses swayed but held. When she straightened, there was flour on her left cheekbone from the bread she had been shaping an hour ago, and she was wearing an apron with a faint soup stain near the pocket. She opened her mouth to apologize. He spoke first. "Stay," he said. It was one word. Quiet. Not a command in the harsh sense, more like someone asking the sun not to set just yet. She stayed. Something happened in that corridor that Mara had no language for at the time. She felt it before she understood it. A warmth that started at the base of her throat and moved outward slowly, like sunlight through glass. It was not frightening. It was not strange, exactly. It was more like recognizing a song she had never heard before, but somehow already knew. His jaw had gone tight. His eyes had not moved from her face. She learned later what it was. The mate bond, the deep, rare, ancient connection between 2 souls that the shifter world had built entire traditions around, was not supposed to work the way she had been told it worked. She had always thought it was a dramatic thing, loud and obvious. But in that corridor, it was quiet. It was a door opening slowly. He took the tray from her hands and set it on the side table himself. Then he offered his hand. "One dance," he said. She stared at him. "You cannot be serious," she said, and then immediately wished she had stayed quiet, because one did not say that to the Alpha King. But the corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile, just the beginning of one, and he kept his hand where it was. She thought about Mrs. Fenn. She thought about the rule. She thought about the 3 years she had spent staying in the kitchen and doing her work, and not wandering. Then she thought about how an old housekeeper named Clara, who had worked at Ashvale for 40 years before retiring, had once taught her to waltz in the back pantry on a slow Tuesday afternoon. Clara had said, "Every woman should know how, just in case the occasion ever finds her." Mara had laughed. Clara had been serious. She put her hand in his. He walked her through the doors of the great hall. The room was full of the most important people in the shifter world. Pack representatives in their finest clothing, elders with silver at their temples, diplomats who had traveled from territories far away, a woman near the far pillar, tall, very beautiful, in a gown the color of midnight, turned when the doors opened, and went very still. Mara did not know her name yet. She learned it later. Lady Seraphine of the Eastern Pack. She had been spoken of, quietly, as the likely choice for Luna. The whispers started immediately. Mara heard them the way you hear rain starting on a roof. First one, then many, then a constant sound. She could feel eyes on her uniform, on her apron, on the rubber band in her hair. She focused on the music. The quartet had shifted into a slow waltz. Her feet remembered what Clara had taught her. Left, together, right. She kept her spine straight. She kept her chin level. She did not look at the crowd. She looked at him, because he was looking at her, and his expression was the steadiest thing in the room. He did not perform for anyone watching. He simply danced with her, unhurried and calm, as if the crowd and the whispers and the politics did not exist. As if there were no one else in the room worth looking at. That quietness of his, that complete focus, was more disarming than anything loud could have been. The waltz ended. The room was silent for exactly 1 beat. He did not release her hand. He turned to face the assembled gathering, all 12 packs, all the elders, all the representatives and diplomats and observers, and he spoke in a voice that was not raised but carried to every corner of the hall. "The moon does not ask permission, neither will I. This is my mate, she will be your Luna." The room broke open. Everyone spoke at once. The elder council rose from their chairs. Lady Seraphine picked up her champagne glass, held it for a moment, and set it back down. His beta, a broad, steady man named Orion, was standing near the door with his eyes closed, the expression of a man accepting rain he had not brought an umbrella for. Mara stood in the center of all of it, and did the only thing available to her. She held herself still. She kept her spine straight and her chin level, because Clara had told her that too, a long time ago in a back pantry. Stand like you belong somewhere, even when you are afraid. The eldest pack elder was a woman named Vara. She was 140 years old, and had seen 4 Alpha Kings crowned and unmade, and crowned again. She raised one hand, and the room quieted, the way rooms do when someone with true authority asks them to. She looked at Mara for a long time, not unkindly, more like a woman reading a document carefully before signing it. Then she looked at Caden. "The bond is legitimate?" she asked. "Without question," he said. Vara nodded once. "Pack law is older than politics," she said. "It is done." In the hours that followed, while the council held emergency meetings and the estate hummed with argument and speculation, the bond verification process began, a formal tradition that required a full lineage reading for both parties. Mara had not known what that meant when Orion explained it to her gently in a small side room, with a cup of tea she held with both hands, because they were trembling slightly. What the lineage reading revealed quieted even the loudest voices on the council. Mara Calloway was not, as many had already decided, a nobody. She was the unregistered daughter of a Beta bloodline, a family that had once held significant rank within Ashvale Pack before a political conflict 17 years ago had struck their name from the official records. Her mother, to protect her, had placed her in service at the very estate where that family had once stood with honor, hidden in plain sight, invisible by design. Mara had not known the full truth. She had known fragments, a name her mother had sometimes said with a complicated expression, a small pendant she kept but never explained. She had never pushed for more. The kitchen had been safe. The kitchen had been enough. The record did not change what the bond was. That had already been declared, but it made it harder for anyone to build an argument against what had already been done. By the time the sun began to suggest itself along the eastern ridge, the gathering had transformed into something no one had planned for. Mara sat on the eastern balcony in a borrowed coat, her apron finally removed, watching the sky shift from dark blue to something warmer. Orion brought her tea without being asked. He stood beside her for a moment before he spoke. "He has never looked at anyone like that," he said. "Not once. In 29 years. She did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing. She wrapped both hands around the mug. When Caden finally came to find her, his jacket loosened, his eyes tired in the honest way of a man who had just argued with 12 different people in one. He stood beside her at the railing and looked at the same sky. They were quiet for a moment, a good kind of quiet. "Are you afraid?" he asked. She thought about it honestly. That was one thing she had always done, even in the kitchen. She thought about things honestly rather than quickly. "Yes," she said, "but I was not afraid when we danced. I will try to hold on to that." He looked at her for a moment. Then he nodded, slowly, the way a person nods when something is exactly enough. Below them, in the great hall, Elder Vara was already seated at a writing table, composing the official Luna coronation announcement in her careful, ancient hand. The 12 packs were still gathered. The candles had burned low. The night had been very long. But the sun was coming up over Ashvale, and the kitchen maid, who had never expected to be seen, was standing in the morning light, holding a cup of tea, next to the man who had chosen her in front of everyone, not for her name, not for her bloodline, and not for her gown, because she had not been wearing one. He had chosen her in a hallway, with flour on her face, and a tray of wine she had almost dropped. Some people are born to be seen. Some are born to be useful. Mara Calloway, it turned out, had always been both. The world had simply needed the right moment to notice.